Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om. So you remember the student asked for 5 important questions. We started with को नाम बंधः कथमेष आगतः कथं प्रतिष्ठास्य कथ विमोक्षः को असौ अनात्मा परमः क आत्मा तयोर्विवेकः कथमेतत् उच्यताम्. We said about what is bondage, how does it arise, how does it continue to exist, what is the way to get rid of it, what is an Atman and Paramatman, how to distinguish the two. These are the questions. So, after praising the Shishya for its diligence and the way he questioned and all that, which are very relevant questions, which are very essential for all those who are desiring after liberation, etc. And the Guru starts advising him. So he first takes up the 4th question, namely, what is moksha? How to get it? How liberation is obtained? Because that's the most important and one of immediate urgency. So he's taking it up first. And of course, he will also, but leading to that, he will slowly also get into the analysis of the Viveka, the distinction between Atman and Anatman, how to distinguish the two. So he starts with the sloka, Mokshasya hetuhu pratamo nigatyate vairagyam atyanta anitya vastushu tatashamaschapi damastitiksha nyasa prasakta akila karmanam brisham. So he says the first is vairagya, atyanta vairagya, anitya vastushu atyanta vairagya. The detachment from, extreme detachment from all that are anitya or impermanent. Then, then he says there is first the discrimination, then tata stutihi, then mananam, hearing the scriptures, manana, satatva dhyanam, param nitya nirantaram munehe, doing it daily, uninterrupted, long meditation, shravan mananidhi dhyasan. And tata avikalpam parametya vidwan ihaiva nirvana sukham samrichati. He gets the wonderful bliss of liberation here itself, in this world, in this body itself. That's how he starts. Then he really makes him understand essentially this distinction between the Atman and Anatman. Where does it start really? How to begin that? Obviously, the one which is really binding us, our greatest bondage is first and foremost body, because mind is also there. Perhaps even a greater bondage is the body. So he will start with the great description of body. That's why he says, Yad bodhavyam tava idanim atma anatma vivechanam taduchite maya samyak shrutva atmani avadharya. Listen to it very carefully. Now I'm going to tell you what is to be really known, that we must know in the matter of discrimination between Atman and Anatman. You see, that's very, very important. Atma, Anatma, Vivechanam. So listen to it carefully, attentively, and then you get a clear Atmani Avadharya. Learn about it. Then we saw in the next sloka, he starts the description of the body. What does it constitute? How does this illusion or delusion, how this wrong identification, how does all begin? So he's starting, we saw Meja, Asti, Majja, Asti, Veda, Pala, Rakta, Charma, etc., bone, etc., etc., these skin, flesh, blood, and everything. These are the things which compromise, which compose the, which are the composition of the gross body, and then legs, thighs, etc. So actually, the body, which is at the root of the delusion of me and mine, this is called the gross body by the wise. if you really understand, if you analyze the idea of me and mine, me or mera, as they say in Hindi. So this me and mine, if you go deeper, everything is ultimately coming to the enjoyment of the body. You may say my clothes, my house, my car, my other possessions, these items of food, etc. Again, they're all linked to the idea of the body. It's only for the sukha, the enjoyment of the body. All these external objects are used, are identified. Even if we say my things, my possessions, my house, car, etc., all that ultimately go and land in this item called body. If it is not for the comfort of the body, for the enjoyment of the body, these external things have no place in one's life at all. So the real identification is coming from the idea that I am the body. This we think, this body to be the Atman, this we think to be the essential. So aham mamaiti. So I go, I stand, I jump, I take. This is the base of I sense. Not only that, all the positions, everything are they are the idea from the idea I am this body. Then how does it come about? It is anitya, it's impermanent, it is true, but then the composition of the body, how is it composed? How is it brought about? How it is created? That he starts with the next sloka. Nabho nabasvat dahanambu bhumayaha sukshmani bhutani bhavanti tani परस्परांक्षैर मिलितानि भूत्वा स्थूलानि च स्थूल शरीर हेतवः. What is the स्थूल शरीर हेतवः? Cause of the gross body. What is that? All this nabho nabasvat dahanam bhumaya. See the sky, air, fire, water, earth, the five elements. The subtle parts of these elements combined together, they become the gross, and they are the cause of the gross body. There's something in Sanskrit called panchikarana, how it is really converted. They say that the elements, the akasha, agni, vayu, prithvi, apar, jal, etc., they're all in the first subtle form. Then by the will of the creator, they are divided into, say, five parts. The one half of this is kept for the element itself. The other half, 1/4 of each of other half, that means 1/8 of each element combines together. Then it combines with the other element, and that becomes part of the gross body. Supposing, if you take Agni, it's divided into, say, five parts, two halves. Then after that, one half, 1/4 of that combines, 1/4 of that means 1/8 of the total Agni Angshar element combines with Vayu. Similarly, 1/8 of other comes with that. So the other four with Agni, each 1/8, 1/8, 4/4 means half of that. Then Agni half, that half plus this half becomes whole. That is how one element becomes gross. So it's called Panchikarana. Of course, this technicality is not so important. The idea is these are all essentially subtle elements. They combine with one another. So, parasparang shaila para parasparang shair militani bhutani stulani cha stula sharira hetavaha. All these they combine with each other, become gross, and they become the cause of the gross body. So, what is it that is indicated? All these things are of the nature of destruction. They are of the nature of complete dissolution, the elements. So that is why this body, which is composed of these five elements, essentially, when the occasion called death happens, all these they go back to their respective elements ultimately. Whether you burn it or you bury it, ultimately they are destroyed. So they have come from the subtle elements, assuming the gross form, and then through panchikarana, through combination, militani, bhutani, and the gross body is created. So why do you pay attention to this? It's not going to stay permanently. It has come from the elements. Moreover, whatever is a compound is going to be destroyed ultimately. So this is a compound combination of all these elements. So this has to go ultimately. So the idea is, no, understand the basic nature of the body. We think that this is eternal, this is permanent, it is going to be there. So much attention we give, so much of care, so much of medicine, so much of food, everything. Yes, to some extent may be necessary, but then the excessive attachment, that is because we forget that these are basically of the nature of getting destroyed. They will not be there at all after some time, maybe 50 years, 60 years, 70 years, 80 years, whatever it is. So these are all. So ultimately, one has to find a solution and go beyond this and seek something which is permanent. So as long as we are stuck at the level of the body itself, we never go beyond that. And that is how there is so much of attachment, and that leads to sorrow, suffering, unending suffering. Not only that, repeated births and deaths, unending births and deaths. So there is no end to the suffering. So if one knows the real nature of the gross body, so of course, here it is put very beautifully. But Sri Ramakrishna gives even more graphic description. What is there in the body? It's all only the flesh and blood and mala and mutra and all those waste things which are absolutely useless, worthy of being thrown away. What does the gross body consist of? Why there is attachment? What is going to happen? Even the most beautiful person, inside that person, what is there? That's what Thakur says. Never ever get attracted. And then again he goes further. Matra tadiya vishya bhavanti shabdadeha pancha sukaya bhoktuhu. So these five essences, मात्राः तदीया विषयाः भवन्ति शब्दादयः पंचसुखाय भक्तुः. The five essences of the Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha, the five elements, they become objects of sense perception for the pleasure of the enjoyer. Bhoktuhu, Sukhaya Bhoktuhu. Bhoktuhu Sukhaya, for the Sukha, the pleasure of the enjoyer. Bhoktuhu. These Shabdadaya, they become the objects. Vishaya Bhavanti, they become objects. The subtle elements, the five essences of these Pancha, Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha, they become these sense objects, objects of sense perception. So, these are, they are Vishaha, what is that? They say it comes from the root singe with V, meaning to bind. They are so called because they bind so strongly. In the sound, etc., Shastras, sound, etc., are referred to as the five tanmatras. They use the expression matra, matras tadiya is pursuant to the Shastra. These matras, the tanmatras, are the subtle elements of these five Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Gandha. They become the sense objects. And then Shankaracharya clearly explains the binding nature. Sayeshu mudha visheshu baddha ragaurupashena sudurdamena ayanti niryanti adha urdhvamuchaihi swakarma dutena javena nitaha. You see, yeshu mudha visheshu baddha, those mudas who are bound to the sense objects, visheshu baddhaha, how they are bound? Ragorupashena, Sudurdamena, that which is difficult to snap, Sudurdamena, it's difficult to snap, that kind of a cord, that kind of a rope, supposing an animal is bound to a pillar, however much it tries, it cannot get away from the pillar. Similarly, the Mudas, the people who are terribly bound by the senses, the desires, the sense objects of sound, etc., they are Vishayeshu. In this Vishaya, Ragoru Pashe, the god of attachment, god of terrible attachment, which is difficult to snap, they are bound by that. What happens as a result? Ayanti niryanti adahurdva muchaihi swakarma dutena javena nitaha. You see, they go up and down. They keep on because of their Swakarma, Swakarma Dutena, by one's own karma in the form of dharma and adharma, they keep going up and down. They they take the human birth, they do something which is very bad, they go and take birth in uh, animal yonis, etc., get animal bodies, maybe then again there is again a rise, something happens, they become better, again they take human birth, then they do something good, they go to Swargas, Urdhvanada, keep going up and down, up and down. So he does not consider even going to Swarga, etc., something worthy. Whether going to Swarga or going to Naraka, whether taking a lower birth in an animal form, etc., or even going to Swargaloka, Urdhvamuchaihi, Adha Urdhvamuchaihi. So the by own actions, Swakarma Dutena, which act as emissaries, Javena Nitaha, they keep on going up and down. They come, depart, go up and down. This is the nature of life. So, even the idea of Swargavas, where there is supposed to be so much of enjoyment and all that, this also has to end. And if it ends, they come down to this earth only. Again, they have to go through all that. So, for a person who is attached to sense objects, there's absolutely no scope for liberation at all because they bind you so tightly as if an animal is bound to a pillar, however big the animal may be, maybe an elephant, but still, if it is tied to a strong pillar, it can never get out. It's so strong, but still it can never escape. In the same way, the attachment of the Vishayas, the senses, and the sense objects, the attachment of the sense objects is so strong and bound by that cord, the Mudas who are ever indulgent in senses, they never get a chance for any liberation. So, naturally, when the Shankaracharya takes up anything, he drives that point, makes it stronger, and then, unless we get it, he's not going to leave it. So, again, he takes further. Shabdadvihi पंचभिः एव पंच पंचत्वमापुः स्वगुणेन बद्धाः कुरंग मातंग पतंग मीन मृंगानरः पंचभिः पंचभिरंचितः किम. So he says the animals like the deer, elephant, kuranga means deer, matanga is elephant, patanga is the moth, etc. Meena is the fish, and mringa is the black bee. They meet with death because of the attachment to the shabda, sparsha, etc. Each one, because of that bondage. What needs to be said of man who is desires all of them together, is attached to all of them, not only one. All the five, the sense objects related to all the shabda, sparsha, rupa, rasa, gandha, whereas the animals, each is attracted by one. That leads it to death. Shabdadi Panjivitya. So, what to say about that? The human being who is attached to or attracted to all that. See, all these Panchatva Mahapusva Gunena Baddaha, this Kuranga, etc., Shabdadihi Panchavireva. So, these five things, they are attached to one of these five and they meet with their death. Naraha Panchaviranchitaha Kim. Nara who is attached to all the five, what to speak of him? See the sound, Sabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha, sound, touch, then sight or the form, and then taste, Rasa, and Gandha, smell. Each one of them, the deer, elephant, moth, fish, and black bee meet with death, bound by the rope of their native tendencies. Swagunena Baddaha, bound by their own nature. What is that? Actually, each creature is actually limited by only that sense. Still, they meet with death. What to speak of man, in whom the combination of all this is always attracting him, he always indulges. So definitely he is bound to meet with a terrible fate. So they say, supposing you want to catch a deer, although it runs very fast, if you play some flute or something like that, attracted by the sound, it stops. and then it is caught and it is killed. So, this Shabda, Kuranga, the deer is attracted by sound and it meets with death. Similarly, mighty elephant is wandering about, is uncontrollable. Sparsha, when they touch of a female elephant, immediately it comes to a halt. Then it is caught, is tempted by that touch. And then that alone is enough where he is attracted. Then Patanga, moth, simply it rushes towards flame, attracted by its light or the rupa, the vision, the sight, and it goes and meets with the death. It goes and falls there. And then Meena, what is that? The rasa, taste. To catch it, they put something tasty in that hook and attracted by the taste, it comes, it bites it and meets with its death. And finally, the bee that's Bringa, what does it do? How does it meet with its death? The attracted to the smell of the flowers. It's famously it is told. Sometimes there is a lotus flower, it is blooming, and the smell attracts it. The bee comes, it gets into it, starts sucking the honey. It forgets itself. Then during sunlight, the flower closes, and there itself the bee meets with its death. So each of these shabdas, sparsha, etc., lead this species like deer, elephant, etc., to their fatal end. There is no question of sin for them because there is no obligatory duties, etc. Yet a great calamity strikes such animals because they have no, not that they have neglected their scripture ordained duties, etc., because they have no obligatory duties. Yet they meet with their death. But being a slave of the five senses, the man fails to do his duty. That means discrimination between the Atman and Atman. And if he does what is prohibited by him, namely indulgence in the sense pleasures, he comes to grief endlessly. Then, he goes even further. How dangerous are these sense objects? The sense experience, we saw in this loka, how the person who is attracted, who indulges in the objects, sense objects related to all these Shabda, Rupa, Rasagandha, Sparsha, etc., he meets with his death. But he says they are so deadly, more deadly than a serpent. The serpent causes death only if someone is bitten by it, and then the poison goes, and then he gets a taste of it, he consumes it, and then only he dies. But in the case of these Vishayas, they are even more dangerous. Doshena tivro Vishaya Krishna Sarpa Vishadapi Visham Nihanti Bhoktaram Drashtaram Chakshushapyam. Sense object is more virulent than the poison of a king cobra. Doshena tivraha Vishaya. Vishaya Krishna Sarpadapi. Like more poisonous, more dangerous than that of a poison of a king cobra. Visham Niyanti Bhoktaram. The poison kills only those who swallow it, whereas Dashtaram Chakshushapayam, the Vishayas, the sense objects, bring about the death of him who merely sees him. The very sight can bring about death. Very important. He says, what happens when the king cobra bites? What they say the poison very quickly travels to the through the blood vessels, goes almost up to the tongue, the upper portion of the body, then mixes with the blood, etc. So here the idea that he consumes it or tastes it, then the such a person dies. That's why there's the word bhoktaram, the person who swallows it. Because no, when it is bitten through the blood vessels, it travels up, and then he consumes it, so to say, and the person meets with death. That's why sometimes you say if it is bitten, if a snake bites, if you tightly tie a knot with something above that point, sometimes the person is saved and so on. But in the case of the sense object, the poison kills him who merely looks at it, because they are disabled to realize the Atman. They're incapable of perceiving the effulgence of their own Atman. The Vishayas, they so obstruct one's drishti, they completely, blind him to the effulgence of their own Atman. So, the Nihanti means completely destroys such a person. Probably, among the sense objects, the sight or the eyes are the most powerful. The other organs can be controlled much more easily, like your ear, nose, etc., etc. But anything, perhaps the first point of contact before anything else, before you hear, before you smell, before you taste, the fastest sense or the sense organ or the indriya, one which is really capable of supersonic speed, is the eyes. Immediately, long as how long can hear, see, you cannot hear if it is beyond a point. But sight, you can see such a long time. Similarly, smell, taste, compared to all that, the sight, the sense organ of eyes, is the most powerful. Let's say probably, when we want to go inward or something like that, the idea is always first close the eyes. When we do meditation, etc., the idea is to go inward. That means we want to control all the indriyas, but we don't put our hands and close the ears, etc. Once the eyes are closed, it's possible, it's easier to take the mind inwards, and thereby the other indriyas largely they become inactive, or they are not at all attentive at all. So it's easier to suppress them or bring them under control. But most important is first close the eyes so that you don't. So that is why probably that's why he says the drashtaram visham nihanti. This poison, like the very sight is like so poisonous, it can kill a person immediately, much more poisonous than the poison of a cobra is compared, because most of the problems originate from the sight. You see something, get attracted. See something. So much of fight, so much of killing, so much of quarrels, everything. Largely they first originate with the sight, experience through sight. Then other organs also come into play. But then even in many cases, road rage, these, that. First is mentally, oh, it has happened, yes, touched my vehicle, he has done something. So everywhere the eyes play a most prominent part in destroying a person, taking him away from Atman, closing his eyes completely, closing his drishti completely from Atman. His own self-effulgence is completely covered. So the sight, the sense organ eye, chakshu, is the most powerful. That's why he has not talked about other indriyas. This drashtaram chakshusaplam, the very sight through the eyes can kill a person. That's what here Shankaracharya says. And then, so again he continues how it is very necessary that only a person who has that kind of a discrimination is capable of achieving what's called liberation, and the person who hasn't got it is in a real mess. विषयाशा महापाशाद्यो विमुक्तः सुदस्तजात् स एव कल्पते मुक्ति न अन्य षट्शास्त्र वेद्यपि. One might know all the shastras, etc., but nahi nahi rakshati dukrim karani. It will not happen, even if you may know grammar, even to other things, you may have read the Shastras. But who is the person capable? Vishyapasha Mahapashadyo Vimuktaha, who is free from the card, Mahapasha. Vishya, Vishyasha, who is free from the card of sense attachment. Sudustyajat, which is so difficult to discard. He alone has the capacity. Saeva kalpate mukte. He alone has the capacity for liberation. Na anyaha, not others, even though that person may be a great scholar. Shat Shastra Vedyapi might be a scholar in 6 Shastras. So, Sudustyajat, this Vishaya Pasha, Mahapasha, is a great bondage. It is a tremendous bondage of the senses, god of sense attachment. Vishayasha, Vishayasha Mahapasha. It's very Mahapasha, it's so difficult to get rid of. Sutyajat. Only a person who is Vimukta, who is free from that, he alone has the capacity. Seva kalpate mukte nanya shat vidyapi. So, a person, because of lack of attachment, lack of right discrimination, gets attached, firmly attached to sense objects, though they are fraught with great dangers. Why do people get attached? Why do we indulge in all that? Because there is lack of discrimination. So he is not aware of the defects in them. He fails to attain the Purushartha, namely moksha. So he who seeks liberation must be completely free in his mind about the desire for sense objects. Unless one completely rids the mind of sense object, there is no hope for liberation, although he might have read the Shastras, etc. That's what he says. And then he continues. Acharya said, doesn't leave it midway. How it can be the apata vairagya or superficial vairagya, all those things will not help. Quite often, something happens, somebody dies, one feels like giving up everything. I want to give up everything and become, people come like that suddenly. Some failure in life, failure in certain, failure in some examination, failure in love, failure in relationship, or even from the family, death of someone dear and near, all they get markat vairagya, temporary. Apatha vairagya, here he uses the word apatha vairagya. So that will not help because it has to be firm, deep down, absolutely unalloyed, without any doubt, without any sandeha. Unless one has such a kind of tremendous vairagya, it will not help. Why? Apata vairagyavato mumukshun bhavabdiparam pratyat mudyata आशाग्रहो मज्जते अंतराले निगृह्य कंठे विनिवर्त्य वेगात्. So apata vairagyavata mumukshu, the seekers of liberation who have this kind of temporary surface level superficial vairagya, bhavabdi param pariyat mudyata, they are trying very hard to get over this samsara sagara, other shore of the ocean, bhavabdi param, they want to cross over this samsara sagara, pariyat mudyata. But what happens? Because they have only this apata vairagya, ashagraho madhyate antarale, nigrihya kanthe vinivartya vega. Vegat, they throw them. This ashagraho, this is the sea monster of desire, the crocodile of desire, ashagraho. How is a crocodile or sea monster? Asha, this crocodile of deep sea monster. Kante nigrihya, catching hold of the neck, Majjate Antharala. In the midway, it catches them and drowns them with tremendous speed. Vinivartya Vegat. So, the superficial vairagya which arises in mind when one is subject to some suffering in life, etc., then that is neither total nor long lasting. After some time, we see so many people come, some tragedy happens, When a son or a daughter dies, for some time they are totally shattered, it appears like that. Then after some time they come back and again they start marriage, etc. The other son, the other family members. So that is the nature of this world. Sometime again it comes and again it covers up. Initially there's a temporary vairagya, but then it disappears. So this way he says this monster, the crocodile of asha or desire, catches hold of the neck of those who have this apata vairagya, who have this temporary superficial vairagya, madhyate antarale. In between, the mid sea, they drown them. And, and not only that, very forcefully, vegat. So, such persons who are desirous of attaining the jnana, etc., effectively turns them back from their objective to get to the other shore of samsara. They are going midway, he catches them, drowns them, so that they are not able to cross over. So, but someone who is completely detached from sense objects and endowed with the qualities of Shama, Dama, Uparati, etc., he goes to a Sadguru, he approaches him with great humility, he learns about the Atman from his life, and he is immediately freed from samsara. He says, in this very life itself, you don't have to wait. If you're a true aspirant, immediately in this very life itself, it's possible to get rid of that. Is it not? Yeva nirvana sukham samrichati. So if you have that, if you have Sravana, Manana, Nididhyasana deeply, without any break, not intermittently, Nityam, Nirantaram, Munehe, for such people, it's possible. Tato avikalpam parametya vidvan. They retain to the state of avikalpa, nirvikalpa, without any vikalpa, and then they reach the highest state of liberation in this life itself. But again, he says, what are the difficulties? Why such people get distracted? What happens? So, if the one who is Vairagya is very temporary or superficial, is bereft of the qualities of Nitya Nitya Vastu Viveka Iha Amutra Palabhaga Viraga Shamadamadi Sampati Mokshutva, all these things are absent in such a aspirant with some temporary vairagya due to something that has happened. He has lost some business, lost some person, someone dear, whatever it is, and then it is maybe temporary. So he is tormented again by desire very soon. After some time, all those desires which are waiting, they come back. They're waiting for a temporary respite. They were all little away for the time being. They know right now they can't approach the person because he appears to be a Vairagyavan. But sometime they again attack him, take hold of him, and drown him. And such a person is not fit for jnana or the highest mukti. So again, you see, he again hammers that idea very strongly. Vishayakya graho yena suvirakta sinahataha sagachati bhavam bodhehe param pratyuha varjitaha. The person Vishayakya graho yena suvirakti asinahataha. Asinahataha, by this word, was killed the Graha, this crocodile monster of Vishayakya, is called as Vishaya, described as Vishaya, with the sword of Vairagya. So Virakti Asinahata, Virakti Asina, the sword of Vairagya was killed this crocodile, reaches the other shore. Sagachati Bhavambodehe Param. He reaches the other shore of the samsara, Pratyuha Varjitaha, freed from all obstacles. So, what is the remedy? Okay, take this word of Vairagya and simply cut to pieces or destroy this crocodile, this monster of Vishaya, the desires. So, without that, without destroying it, without killing it, it's not possible at all. This is the only solution. Again and again, he emphasizes because they are so powerful, so dangerous. The very sight is enough more poisonous than the poison of a serpent, etc. So the monster of Vishaya, Vishayakya Graho, Ena, like, like is likened to a huge crocodile, this desire, monster of Vishaya. Then Suvirakti Asina, the sword of Suvirakti, the steadfast Vairagya, sword of Vairagya, Pratyuha Varjita, without any obstacle in the matter of crossing the ocean, because it's full of the waves like birth, death, old age, disease, etc. But once you have killed this, the biggest obstacle is is a crocodile or some whale or some such sea monster. If that is killed, all the other things are simply overcome in one go, and the person easily swims to the other shore, waiting the kumir, the crocodile, etc., waiting to swallow. So you're always ready with that sword of discrimination. Asina, Virakti Asina. The Virakti is Vairagya, the sword of Vairagya or renunciation. Kill that monster of Vishaya. Then you simply go. And Bhavam Bodehe Param, other shore, that is, he really attains the other shore easily, other shore. Paramapnoti, which is the Paramam Padam. These are some of the words that are used in the Shrutis. Then Gachati means what is that? What is actually going? What is Gachati? Where does he go? Shakshat Karoti. That is released by the intuitive perception. Shakshat Karana of Brahman. So intuitively one perceives Brahman and immediately he crosses the ocean of samsara or is liberated in this very life, in this very birth from the bondage of the unending coming and going. He goes again, he will slowly give the opposites. What happens to the person who is guided by those who are Rishis and those who are guided by good people, the Guru, etc. On that he continues. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Ram Krishna Arpanamस्तु.